What is ethnocentrism? Ethnocentrism is nothing but if you are keeping your own group at the center and you are trying to rank, rate, or judge others, okay, that is known as ethnocentrism. And coming to the cultural relativism, which tried to show the negatives of ethnocentric attitude, which tries to done right of it. Okay. So what is cultural relativism? Cultural relativism is an attitude in the approach of anthropological studies. Okay, so ethnocentrism has been the attitude previously that evolutionists were seeing the other cultures from their own point of view and they are trying to rate it, right? That is the reason they have said Victorians are at the highest stage of civilization, right? So now what cultural relativism has done is that cultural relativism, when did it come or how did it come? So I was telling you yesterday, when Franz Boas, when he was working for the US immigration survey, okay, at that point of time almost 18 to 19,000 skulls have been studied after the World War. So when they were studying the skulls of these immigrated people, okay, when they were studying the skulls of the immigrated people, there they have observed that the ratio of the skulls of parents and children in US is different and from their own country it's different. So then from there he has identified that, see, the changes in the ratio of the skull structure is due to the environmental factors. So they have said that everything will be inherited, right? So all the things that we have got, the color, the purity of the blood, intelligence, so they have said that these are all because of the purity of the race and only whites have got that. But after seeing this, Franz Boas has said that this is not the thing that actually what's talked about. So the concept of race itself is wrong. Okay, so they are dependent on the environmental factors. So from there he disproved the race, and after that, when he went to the people, okay, so Quaticul Indians, okay, so Quaquitul Indians. So he was studying this American Indians. So he went there, he spent time and he was studying this Red Indians. So there he has observed so many things. Okay, so when he went there, when he was studying these people, he has understood that in reality, the culture is affected by so many factors of history. Okay, so every culture evolves based on its history. So different cultures have different history. So they are evolving based on their history. Okay, everywhere it's not the same, not the psychic unity of mankind, which the evolutionist has said. So everywhere it is different. So he said that you should know their history. So that's what we learn in our historical particularism. So every particular society has its own history. So you should study it. You should know the facts. You should collect the data. You should arrange it systematically. Then you should try to come to a conclusion or tell about that culture or talk about that culture. But without doing that, without doing the field work, without knowing its history, concluding that everybody will evolve same, okay, so that is not true. And trying to say who is superior or who is inferior is not right. Why is it not right? Because he says that what is right in one culture may not be right in other culture. So try to understand the culture from their own history, from their own perspective and not from the others. So while he was, please don't, You change your place, right? So when did he come up with this concept? When he has gone to the American Indians to do this study, after observing them, after getting the facts, then he has said that everywhere things are not same. Everybody evolves on a different concept because of their history. So that's why what you should do is that you should judge or try to understand the particular culture from their own perspective rather than looking from your own perspective. So he said that cultures are different, cultures are relative. You can't compare one another directly. Okay, so you should not see one from the lens of the other. You should see from their own perspective, right? So this is the backdrop how the origin has been. Origin of cultural relativism. Origin of cultural relativism dates to the study of Franz Boas. Like one is with respect to race and racism, I told you, right? So while he was working in US immigration survey, he has studied so many skulls, and from there he said the influence is from the environment, and he has disproved the ethnocentric view that whites are intelligent and superior. So their ethnocentric view has been disproved, and later on when he went there, he observed the cultures are relative. Okay, every culture is different because of their history, right? So that's why he said that in the book, Race, Language and Culture. So you should remember the name of the book, and Frank was, right? So in this book, Race, Language and Culture, he has given the concept of cultural relativism and he has defined it, right? What is cultural relativism? Cultural relativism is nothing but you are trying to understand a particular trait of a culture from their own point of view rather than outsiders. Okay, so you're looking at it from the insider point of view rather than outsiders. Okay, so next coming to the advocates, who are the main advocates of cultural relativism. So Franz Boas, and later on the students of Franz Boas, Ruth Benedict, Margaret Mead, Edward Sapir. So this cultural relativism, see now what happens, if I tell all these names, it might be overwhelming to you that so many names are coming. How do we remember this? But you should understand that these are all separate chapters itself. So you'll be learning about them in a greater detail in each chapter. So Edward Sapir, you'll be learning Sapir-Whorf hypothesis in Unit 7 language. Clifford Geertz, you'll be learning in symbolic anthropology. That is a separate topic again. You'll be learning about them in greater detail. So you'll automatically use these names when you write the answer next time. But if I don't tell you now, you won't understand that. You should link those people here. Okay, so I'm just trying to give an interlinking. So don't get overwhelmed by the too many names, but just try to understand. So what is cultural relativism? When you see any culture, you are not judging it from your perspective. You are not seeing from your own cultural thoughts, but rather you are going and studying them, and you are looking from their own way. Okay, I told you an example of Onotowans of Micronesia, right? So they'll marry grandmothers or the women who are more fertile, right? In India, it's not permitted. So now, if you judge from our perspective, it's going to be wrong. You should try to understand from their own way, right? So this is what cultural relativism is about. So the main advocates are Franz Boas and his students. He has trained a number of people. Okay, so that's why he's also called as father of American anthropology. So who is the father of Britain anthropology? E.B. Taylor, British. Right, again, I'm sorry. If you see, like, what do you recall by seeing this image? Hmm? caveman and home. Like, do you recall any people? What what is this actually? Igloo, right? So who are these people? Like, where do you generally see igloos? Polar. So who are the people living over there? Inuits, Eskimos, right? So there they are having a practice that is female infanticide. So you should know difference between foeticide and infanticide. Female foeticide can happen only when you are able to recognize when the child is within the woman's womb, right? So there, at that point of time, there is no technology. Now also to them, there is no technology in those polar regions to identify. So they used to kill the female child. Why? What is the reason? Because there in that society, men go for fishing or getting the resources, food to live. Men do that job. Okay, but in the Arctic region, if you see, the resources are very scarce. Sorry, very scarce. Okay, you have very less resources. When the resources are very scarce, what happens? Only few people will be able to meet the demand of the living, right? So it can feed only few people. Now, if more number of females are there and very few males, who will get the food? Now, if there are more number of females, then entire group will starve and they'll go to death. So what they understand is that if we have more number of males, that would be better for the group. Henceforth, they promote the male child and they practice female infanticide. So from their point of view, it's right, because if the group has to survive, so every time if the female child is born, an entire group is females, and you get only food for 5 people, and you are 10 people. So now 5 people has to forego their life. So instead of that, they have adopted the practice of female infanticide. So if you look from outside, from our own ethics and moral values of the modern society, you will definitely say that female infanticide should not be practiced.
So what is the name of that group?
Inuits of Eskimos. Right. So spelling IN.
Is the practice still going on?
In some of the places it's still on. In India only you have for other reasons. Recently, the people or the police of Haryana has put out the racket that is being practiced in those regions. Even female or the woman themselves wanted to get aborted if they get to know the child is female. So the reasons are very different in India, but it's not our interest now. So you need to understand that cultural relativism is not encouraging any wrong thing to happen. It is not encouraging any right thing to happen. Rather, it is trying to understand the culture. So generally what people think is that now cultural relativism is encouraging the negative aspects, like they are encouraging female infanticide. So there is other practice in the most of the African regions where the Islam practice has been. So especially in Sudan, Nigeria. So in those regions, if you see, there is a practice known as female genital mutilation, FGM. Why do they do this? What is the reason behind practicing female genital mutilation? Have you ever heard of it?
Part of the religion.
Yeah, why is it, why it has become part of their religion? See what happens in the female genital mutilation, a part of the clitoris has been removed, which is the sensitive part of the woman, right? It has been removed so that the desires of the woman are reduced post marriage, so that she does not engage in any extramarital affairs. Okay, so I'll give you the study, I'll explain, I'll tell you more examples, but try to understand. See, when you have a deep understanding of the subject, automatically you'll write the answer. So try to focus on understanding. So now here what you need to observe is that the reason that they are mentioning is that to avoid that, but because of this, okay, what happens because of that, the discharge, okay, again some part of the clitoris and the other area has been removed, and because of that the passage of the discharge will be less, and that would reduce the greed of the woman to have the sexual desires. This is their understanding from their own society perspective. So now how did these people get to know, right? So Janice Body, who has studied North Sudan, okay, and there is other female anthropologist. So he is one of the anthropologists, and other female anthropologists. You have Shell Duncan. She has also studied those areas of Africa, and from there they have understood that first reason which has been identified, Janice Body, I have already told you that to prevent the extramarital affairs, right? And Shell Duncan, when she was interviewing these people, so what they understood was, what she came to know from the people over there is that male and female are born with both genitals of male and female. Okay, so every person is born with the genitals of both male and female, and in female the clitoris part is the male genital. So by removing the clitoris part, she'll become female. Are you understanding? So everybody is born with both the genitals of male and female, but so by removing one of it, they'll convert to that particular gender. So that is what they are trying to say, why they are doing it. If Sheldon went to those people and she has asked, like, why are you people practicing this? So then they gave their explanation that we are all born with two genitals, both male and female. One part has to be removed in order to become male or female. So for that, in female, we are removing the clitoris part. So that's why they are practicing female genital mutilation. So you can understand the superstitions that is existing. So first, the reason is different. Second, the reason is different. And Shell Duncan, she has associated with the various non-governmental organizations, UN, and she has tried to identify that United Nations has been continuously making efforts to make them aware about the problems that are going on. Okay, continuously making efforts to know. Now, even after the efforts, still the practice is on. So now Hal Duncan, who is anthropologist, who is using the cultural relativistic approach. She did not take any of their earlier consideration because she was from the European society or the Western society. So now, being from Western society, she might be having certain things in her mind. Now she has kept all those things in her mind aside, and she is trying to look at them as it is. She is not judging them, but rather she is trying to understand them. So now when she went there and she observed that the people are telling that, see, actually, she went and she said like to the parents that, see, she is your own child. If you are doing this practice, don't you feel that painful? Your child is going to suffer in the future. So now what they have replied is that, see, parents, like they said, see, seriously, we don't want our child to go through it because of the pain she is suffering. But only the reason is that she is honored, or the family is honored, or family status is respected, or she is able to marry someone. Okay, so she will be marriable only if she undergoes this. So in order to ensure she is marriable and at the same time their honor and status is protected, for that reason we are doing it. Now, through cultural relativism, they have identified, okay, they have identified that the problem is at the society level. And what these United Nations people are doing, they are going to the families and explaining them. So the problem is at the society level and you are addressing at the family level. So initiations has to be brought at the community level so as to bring the change, right? So now cultural relativism, from some people's perspective, it is having negative fallouts, that you are encouraging the wrong things, and from some people's perspective, it is helping to understand the cultures properly and take the proper measures. So I'll dictate the answer, but you understand, like, okay, how to write the answer. I'll be giving clearly with intro, body and conclusion, what all names you have to write. Okay, so but now understand.
The cultural relativism is about learning or just knowing. I mean, like, you said there is a negative fallout to cultural relativism.
Some people look at that way, that because you are telling that cultures are relative and there are no universal things. Okay, so now what we are trying to say, like, because in marriage should happen only after a particular age in India, but in some places it is allowed early. So what these cultural relatives say is that according to the culture, people will do it because it's their own perspective of leading the life. So there are no moral universals. Okay, there is nothing that rule should be followed universally. But there are some people who say that there are certain morals or ethics that has to be universal, because human rights should be universal. Every human has a right to live and lead a happy life. So there are certain universal things. So there comes the difference. So these universalists say that cultural relativists are wrong. In the name of cultural relativism, they are encouraging violation of human rights. So universalists say,
It is also called as ethnocentrism. Like they are focusing on their own preconceived notions or that, and they are imposing that this culture is.
That's what, like, whether it's preconceived, who are imposing? I didn't get your question.
Cultural relativists, negative fallouts of cultural relativists. You are saying that some universalists are saying it's wrong that that culture is doing these things, right? So then,
yeah, I'll explain you clearly that these are the views. Okay, whether it's ethnocentric or not, again, that is a subjective question. So we cannot conclude on it. So never ever try to conclude that thing. So they are being ethnocentric or not. Okay, so just be very careful whatever the words you are using with. So if you are making any conclusion, what it feels like to the examiner, okay, did you go and study? How are you talking about this? So a very mature person, like if you see in many of the interviews, people don't give any direct answer. Definitely it is 70% yes and 30% no. So that kind of answers generally come because there is no answer. It is subjective. There is no perfect answer. So that's why we should never come to conclusion. Okay, right? So I try to show the both sides of the cultural relativism. So cultural relativism is telling that Okay, from their point of view, this practice is right, but it is not telling that let them do the practice. They are showing that this is their culture. From their point of view, this is the reason, that is why they are practicing. Okay, so some of the people like Elizabeth Zecenter, like, okay, you can write these names because these names you don't find in normal resources. Sorry. So Elizabeth Zecenter says that in the name of cultural relativism, you are encouraging the violation of human rights. Right? And the other person who talks in contrary out to the views of cultural relativists is Marvin Harris, who says that you are ignorant, you are telling that every culture is different, they are relative. But he says, Marvin Harris says that you are overlooking the cross cultural similarities. So, two different cultures have the similarities, you are overlooking them. Okay, cultural relativists are overlooking. You can note down Marvin Harris, or else we'll do one thing, I'll dictate the entire answer. So, right, there are people, you have written Elizabeth Center and Marvin Harris, there are many other people. Okay, so this is with respect to cultural relativism, because cultural relativism sometimes might sound or look like that it is encouraging the violation of human rights, and that too in different places. Okay, so when you study at different parts of the syllabus, you will try to come across the examples which you can write. Okay, in many of the cultures, lot many things violate human rights, right? So those, if you say that from their point of view it's right, and if you let them happen, so that might lead to the violation of human rights. So universalists say that you should not let that happen. So that is the reason Clifford Geertz, okay, Clifford Geertz, he takes a lecture. The name of that lecture is very famous, that is anti relativism. So he is anti to those who are against relativism. Okay, he is anti to those people who are anti to the cultural relativism. In this lecture, he says that people have not understood cultural relativism properly. Cultural relativism is not encouraging any violation of human rights. Cultural relativism is not letting any wrong things happen. You did not understand the cultural relativism properly first. Okay, so he says that cultural relativism is an attitude or approach to understand the culture. It is not encouraging or discouraging anyone. It is the proper way or proper way of looking or proper approach to study any particular culture or society. Rather than imposing your own views and trying to show your bias in the study, cultural relativism is asking you to put those bias and your own existing attitude aside and try to look afresh at the particular culture, so that you can understand that culture in a better manner. Okay, so Clifford Geertz in cultural anti relativism lecture, there he emphasizes these things, that people should understand cultural relativism as an approach to understand culture, rather than looking at it as encouraging a particular culture to do any violation of human rights. Okay, is it clear? Right. So now this is cultural relativism. Now you can write down the answer. I'll dictate. So there is one more question, that why cultural relativism has been dear to the anthropologist. Dear, that means close to anthropologists. Why so many people have been following cultural relativism? So can you people tell? Because we have gone through it. We have studied.
It is an approach to understand a culture. So it helps people to understand the culture better.
Good.
That's why.
First, you'll recognize the diversity of cultures. First, you'll understand there are different cultures. So when you recognize the existence of different cultures, you'll try to understand. When you understand, then the difference, when you understand, you'll respect other culture. First is recognizing, second is understanding. When you understand, you'll respect. When you respect, what happens? The differences between the different cultures will reduce, hence by promoting unity and peace in the society. So these all should be written as different points, and you should explain these things, like how understanding has helped. Right now you have understood that this culture is there in monotowns of Micronesia, or I have given you the example of rural areas of North Sudan and South Sudan, right? That Janice body who has studied, and you have also gone through, Shell Duncan also studied those areas. From there you have understood. When you have understood, previously you might be having different opinion about those people, that they are violating human rights, they have different, like you might be looking at them differently. But when you see from their own perspective, you'll understand, okay, these people might not have this scientific knowledge. Why is it happening? That is the reason they are practicing. They have some superstitions, right? So now what we can do, we can bring awareness about them. There, by bringing awareness, you can overcome this problem. So when you understand other cultures, you'll respect. Okay, it doesn't mean that just because of one practice you are hating them.
So we recognize, and then why?
When you recognize, you'll understand. When you understand, you respect.
Simple, and we can be right that cultural pluralism.
Yeah, that comes the cultural pluralism is the end product of the cultural relativism, right? So when you are trying to see as different cultures, when you try to see from their own point of view, then the end product is cultural pluralism. Then you'll have different cultures who are encouraging the rights of the others. I told you again, cultural pluralism and cultural diversity is very different. Okay, cultural diversity means there are different cultures, but cultural pluralism means you know that there are different cultures, you are having the constitutional political measures so that every culture can express themselves. So there is positivity in the cultural pluralism. Cultural diversity is just normally cultural. There are existence of different cultures. They know that different cultures are there, but nobody bothers about whether they are able to express or not. Clear? So just note down. Write a short notes on cultural relativism or cultural relativism as a question. Okay. So Franz Boas in Race, Language and Culture. Franz Boas in Race, Language and Culture. So he is an important personality. So we'll be reading him in detail, but no doubt. So Franz Boas in Race, Language and Culture believe that Please try to be quick. Okay, Anil. So Franz Boas in Race, Language and Culture believe that each culture should be understood. Each culture should be understood and evaluated on its own values rather than judged rather than judged based on the values of based on the values of observer culture. Okay, so after that try to write a subheading methodologies used. Okay, so different people have took different approach to explain this method, what do you call cultural relativism. Now Franz Boas, he studied the histories, and from there he has said that every culture is having different history. Henceforth, every culture is different, so you should not judge. And coming to other people, okay, so there is a person known as Edward Sapir. Okay, Edward Sapir. So you just note down these names because you will come across at later point of time. But if you include the subheading, so now if I don't tell you that tomorrow when you are writing answer, you might not do it. So just keep a mention so that tomorrow when you complete the syllabus, you will understand it better. Okay, so write the methodology that is used. So first, Franz Boas, who tries to study the history. Okay, Franz Boas, who tried to study historical and the comparative aspect to understand cultural development and change. Franz Boas, who used historical and comparative methods to understand cultural development and change. Cultural development and change. Franz Boas, who used historical and comparative method to understand cultural development and change. Okay, next you write the Ruth Benedict, who is a student of Franz Boas. The spelling. So she is a female anthropologist again, Ruth Benedict. Okay, so we'll be studying about her in great detail. I told you like patterns of culture, right? So there she tries to say that now every culture is having different pattern. So in every culture you have patterns, and these patterns together form configuration. So now in this configuration there is something that is dominating. Okay, so now suppose you take, if in an area, so all the people are peaceful, so they're following the Gandhian principles. So there are so many traits and patterns. Within that pattern, what is dominating? Gandhian trait. Everybody is following non-violence. Suppose you take an area, especially you can take the what do you call Andhra Pradesh. Like recent elections saw so much of dominance of caste, right? So what is dominating? Caste, right? So what you need to understand here is that personality is based on the dominating pattern. Okay, so the personality influences the culture. So if you see in the entire culture what is dominating, you can easily tell Gandhian philosophy is being followed here. So one particular thing is dominating, right? So that dominating feature forms the personality, and that personality influences culture. So culture influences personality, personality influences culture. This we'll be studying in greater detail, but anyhow I explained you the maximum. So now that personality influences culture. So in every area the pattern and configuration is different. the dominating personality is different, so every culture will be different. So culture is relative. So they try to explain that cultural relativism through the approach of configurationalist approach. So Benedict used configurationalist approach to tell that every culture is different because the personality influences culture and personality is result of their basic features, right? So Ruth Benedict used the configurationalist approach, and you will be able to write better when the anthropological thought is done. So next you have Edward Sapir. Edward Sapir says that language influences culture. Okay, he uses the examples. Okay, you'll be again learning these also, but you write down the third methodology, third person. Okay, you need, there are many people, you can write 10, 20 also, but if you put this one aspect in your answer, it makes difference from what others are doing. Okay, I didn't see so far anybody writing these things, but if you mention that two lines, okay, Ruth Benedict used configurational approach to show, and whereas Edward Sapir also emphasizes the cultural relativism by mentioning that language influences culture, so everywhere language is different, so culture will be different. Culture is relative again, right? So how did he show that? Because he says that within the language, if you see Palong of Burma, so within them you don't have gender, he or she, so they don't have that different gender difference only. So from there he tries to say that culture influences, sorry, language influences culture. In some places there are no words of past, present and future, so their thinking process also influenced by it, so their culture is being influenced by the language. So in that way he says that okay, language influences culture, that's why, so different languages, different kinds of culture, and cultures are relative. Clear? So these are the methodologies employed to show the cultural relativism. That is the approach, that is what he is trying to say. So next, the features of cultural relativism. Just keep a heading that features of cultural relativism. So there you can write the important features that I have told you, right? Why it has been dear to anthropologists because of its features. Why cultural relativism has been dear to anthropologists? It's because of its features. First, recognition of diversity of culture. Second, understanding of other cultures. So you need to use the shortcuts in while writing. Like you can just put C for culture, CN for civilization. So these kind of things can save your time while you are taking running notes. Okay, so understanding of other cultures, then after that respect for other cultures. So when you understand, you develop respect. When you develop respect for other cultures, the differences and discrimination between the cultures gets reduced. Decreased differences and discrimination. It promotes unity in diversity. Right? Promotes unity in diversity. Then you write some of the case studies, okay, where this has been shown. Okay, just note down. In Kwakitul Red Indians, Red Indians, the study has been conducted by Franz Boas. Okay, and then after he has written the book The Social Organization and Secret Societies of Quakitul Indians. Okay, so he has written the book, right? The Social Organization and Secret Societies of Quakitul Indians. The Social Organization and the Secret Societies of Quakitul Indians. But this was the book in which, based on this work only, the approach which we have told, that historical and comparative method has been used. And this Ruth Benedict, where did she do the study? She has done a study in Zuni, Dobu and Quakitul. So these names you will be able to write better, but Ruth Benedict study you will be able to write when you write the culture personality school properly. So once you read that, you'll be able to write the studies of her here. Okay, so this one or two studies you can mention that while writing this methodology itself also you can write, or you can keep it separately. So coming to the negative aspects or the criticism, okay, criticism of cultural relativism. So it's not always positive. You should first portray that the critical analysis part. So write down critical analysis of cultural relativism. So you can write Marvin Harris. Marvin Harris opines that cultural relativists, okay, Marvin Harris opines that cultural relativists overlooked general pattern, general pattern and cross-cultural similarities. I'm sorry. Right. So next you can write Elizabeth Jacenter. Elizabeth Jacenter. And Nancy Superhughes. Nancy Superhughes. Both have said that cultural relativists with the name of cultural relativism are encouraging with the name of cultural relativism are encouraging violation of human rights. Okay, so you can write this. And Paul Rosenblatt, and Clifford Geertz. You can use this for conclusion. After criticism, you can say that you can use Paul Rosenblatt and Clifford Geertz for the conclusion that. So Clifford Geertz, if you write, you have to use his lecture. That and Clifford Geertz in his lecture. In his lecture, anti-relativism. So in this lecture, they have highlighted that In this lecture, he has highlighted that cultural relativism has to be looked at as an attitude, as an attitude in the approach of, as an attitude in the approach of field work, in the study or in the field work. It should be seen as an attitude rather than looking at it, as an approach that is encouraging the violation of human rights. So it's just a method that has to be employed while studying, but it is not giving any conclusions, right? Whether you do it or you don't do it, but rather it's helping you understand all the cultures. It's clear? In this, he has highlighted that it's a method or attitude in the approach of fieldwork study, so which helps us understand culture better rather than encouraging any violation of human rights. So it's neither positive nor negative because it's a method. You'll study afterwards what to do and what not to do, it's your call. So many of the anthropologists encourage protection of human rights. They're not against. Because if you see, Shell Duncan, I told you, right, Shell Duncan is the female anthropologist who went and studied there. So now she has helped the United Nations to take the measures at the community level. Because previously their understanding was at the family level. So they're encouraging it. So in that way you can use all these things and you can write the answer. I think this is more than sufficient for cultural relativism. So next we'll move to superorganic view of culture. So what is superorganic view of culture? So when the question comes whether cultural relativism is leading to the violation of human rights, first you have to talk about the people who have said, like Marvin Harris, and the Elizabeth Dissenter, that it is leading to the violation of human rights. You write some examples, right? So female genital mutilation, female foeticides. Okay, these all examples you will quote, and after quoting that, you will. I'll just tell you one more example. Fahami Dana, like just note down. This example is good example that which generally it's not find. Generally people don't find it. Famahi Dana. It's a funeral in the Madagascar. Famahi Dana. It's a funeral tradition. It's a funeral tradition in Madagascar. What they do is that every 7 years, okay, they bring bodies out of the tombs. They bring bodies out of the tombs, wrapping them in a cloth and dancing with them. So they'll bring out and dance. Right. So now,
So this is a violation of human rights.
obviously, like it feels like you are disrespecting the deceased person. So it is against the right of the person after death. Right. But again, that's from the relativist view that is their culture. It might be they might be feeling that they are respecting it. The people who are doing it feels that they are respecting it, and at the same time, one more thing is that because of that, there is a chance of spreading of diseases as well. Right. So when you bring them out or interacting with them. So this is one of the practice in Madagascar where the people So how you are looking at it? If you are looking at from their perspective, then you'll understand better. But if you are looking from your perspective, then you might consider this practice to be savage. Right. So where are we?
Also relativism is how to write the answer.
How to write the answer, right? So these are all the examples that first you will be writing the violation, how is it being done and how the people are talking about. Then you can write that, okay, though this is one of the perspective expressed by the universalist that cultural relativists are encouraging the violation of human rights, but in reality cultural relativism is encouraging the protection of human rights. How? By understanding the other cultures better, and you can quote the examples of Shell Duncan and the other Janice Body or any other. Like you can write the conclusion with Clifford Geertz again, that who says that it is a method which can help us understand better. That's how you have to write. First, you'll write the violations. Okay, you'll say that what is cultural relativism, give the definition by Franz Boas, that now this extreme form of cultural relativism, which extreme form of cultural relativism means that you should let everyone practice their own. Okay, so if you see that every culture has its own morals and values and they can practice. So this might have led to the violation of human rights. But again, the understanding of the cultural relativism from anthropological point of view is that it is a method to understand cultures rather than encouraging anything, and this has been shown in Shell Duncan's study and other study also. So we should write in the conclusion that whether cultural relativism and human rights are in stuff with each other is not a question, because cultural relativism from anthropological point of view, it's a method just to understand, not to encourage anything from anthropological point of view. From others, if they think that cultures are relative, that you should let them encourage, that is a very different thing. But from anthropology, if you see, it's a method employed, attitude when you study something. Beyond that, again, it's a department of all other social sciences. Okay, so if you go beyond and discuss, then it's a different case. So you might be reading in other places more about cultural relativism. But from anthropological point of view, as far as the knowledge that we have so far, or the material that is available, that has been provided till Clifford Geertz, and thereafter again that was the general material only. Okay, so this way if you can conclude and bring in these all things, it would be more than sufficient. Now coming to the superorganic view of culture. First of all, you should know what is inorganic, what is organic, and then you will get to know what is superorganic. So what is inorganic?
Which doesn't have life, which is not organic.
Right. So which does not have life is inorganic. So it's a combination of atoms and minerals. And what is organic? Organ is something which is carrying life. So now what is organic culture? Organic culture is something which is made by those who are carrying life. So that means humans. So organic culture is nothing but the culture that is result out of the activities of human. This is organic culture. What is superorganic? Which is beyond the organic is superorganic. So superorganic is something which is beyond the organic. That means which is beyond the creation of the humans. Okay, super organic is something which is the result of itself rather than the activities or the innovations or the contributions of the humans. So that is super organic view of culture. So you just note down the definition. Okay, first you note down that Emile Durkheim. Okay, Emile Durkheim was the person first who put forward this word. Emile Durkheim is the one who put forward, and it has been brought to anthropology by A.L. Kroeber. It has been brought to anthropology by A.L. Kroeber. Who defines? Who defines culture? Who defines culture is an entity? Culture is an entity that exists. Culture is an entity that exists above and beyond the individual. Culture is an entity that exists above and beyond the individual. This view suggests that culture is autonomous. This view suggests that culture is autonomous and self-perpetuating. Culture is autonomous and self-perpetuating with its own rules and logic. With its own rules and logic. Now you should write answer in a debate format. Okay, so then you'll write that there are different anthropological expressions or the perspectives with respect to superorganic view of culture. First note down. So different anthropological perspectives or views of different anthropologists. So you should write it in such a manner that you are discussing things. Okay. So it should not be like you are quoting it. It should be like discussing. Okay. So you have ended there. What is superorganic view? What is superorganic view of culture? And thereafter you should write that. So there are different perspectives with respect to superorganic view of culture from the various anthropologists, and then you write down Radcliffe Brown, A.R. Alfred Radcliffe Brown opines that culture consists of both organic and superorganic components. Culture consists of both organic and superorganic components. Okay, so superorganic components include such as language and religion, etc. Superorganic components include language, religion, etc. Even Leslie White supported the even Leslie White supported the R. Radcliffe Brown views. A.R. Brown, R.C. Brown, same. Okay, so Leslie White supported the views of Radcliffe Brown that culture is a separate autonomous entity which could not be reduced to organic structures. See, Leslie White also supported the Ratliff Brown's view that culture is a separate autonomous entity and could not be reduced to organic structures. Organic structures. Right. So these are the views. However, anthropologists like Malinowski have differed and rejected the idea of superorganic structures. Have differed and rejected the idea of superorganic structures. He argued that culture could not be separated from the biological and physical aspects. He argued that culture could not be separated from the biological and physical aspects of the society, and it is part of organic part of and that it is organic part of human behavior. This view has been supported by Marvin Harris, in his views that cultural institutions were shaped by material conditions of the society. In his views that cultural institutions were shaped by the material conditions of society, such as environment and economy. Economy. Even Edward Sapiro, I think Sapiro has criticized that culture is dynamic and it is not static. Culture is dynamic and is not static, and this dynamism in the culture is result of an individual. And this dynamism is result of an individual. I'll explain everything. Just once you are done, then we'll discuss it properly. Okay. So henceforth, Edward Sapir says that one should refrain from classifying culture as organic or super organic. Henceforth, he says that one should refrain from classifying culture as organic or super organic. Okay, so now if you see organic, super organic. What is super organic? Suppose you have language. How did language form? First, two people who want to communicate, they might have used rudimentary form, that signs, they might have used signs, right? So in the rudimentary form, they might have used signs to communicate that whether you are eating, you want water. So they might be used some signs. Later on, some sounds, like by making some sounds. Like if you see animals, some enemy is coming, they'll make a different kinds of sound. They're communicating that way. Slowly over a period of time, you have created alphabets, words, sentences, grammar, language. So you have the entire language. Now a lot of books have been produced, new inventions keep coming. So there might not have been the word email. Was there the word email previously? It has been added later with the creations. Now language, if you take, it has become so huge. Now individual cannot learn entire language. Only some part of the language he can learn. So now language has become much bigger than single individual. So much bigger than the human, and it is operating itself, right? So this is what culture becoming super organic. Religion. So one person cannot know completely about the religion. Only some epics you might be reading, and that from that only you will try to come to your conclusions. But you have never read everything that is present with respect to religion. So culture is super organic. This is from the L. Kroeber, Ratcliffe Brown, Leslie White, from their point of view. Okay, so it was given by Emil Durkheim, then brought to sociology by Herbert Spencer, then from there American anthropologist L. Kroeber brings it to anthropology, and within anthropology, when the discussion is happening, the support was given by Ratcliffe Brown and Leslie White. But at the same time, now comes in Malinowski. He says that culture is something that is there to meet the needs of an individual. We have read the example, right? We have read the definition of culture, right? What is culture according to him? It's a mechanism to fulfill the needs of an individual. So if the individual is having the needs, then only the culture will be created, new things will be created. If individual wanted to create some messaging platform, email, that is the reason you have got email as the name, or else where from you would have got that new innovation in the culture. So you can't make culture super organic beyond the individual. So culture is created by the individual to fulfill his needs. So they have opposed the views that culture is super organic, right? Even Marvin Harris, so you will be studying him in the later part of our theories, cultural materialism. Okay, so when we do that theory, we will be reading about him. So there he'll say that culture is influenced from the environment and economy. All the cultural institutions, the changes are brought based on their environment. So that means it is because of the individual needs only. So he also supported that culture is not super organic, that it is organic in nature. It is because of the individual. And Edward Sapir also says that culture is not static, it is changing, it is dynamic, right? So now why is it dynamic? It is dynamic because individuals are creating new things. Individuals are coming up with new things. Now artificial intelligence is coming. Previously it was not part of the culture. But today artificial intelligence is also culture. So again, basically why is he saying that artificial intelligence is culture? Because we have learned everything that is made by man artificially. Herskowitz in his book Man and His Works, there he says that artificial environment created by man is culture. So artificial intelligence is also created by man, henceforth it is part of culture. Correct. So they say that the dynamism is because of an individual. Henceforth, classifying it as organic or superorganic is of no use. Rather, you should accept that culture is dynamic, and it is result. The dynamism is the result of the change of the innovations or creations brought by the individuals.
Organic means
If humans make it, that is organic. Superorganic means beyond the individuals.
so the dynamism comes from the individual.
Individual. So that's why.
But he's saying that we should not.
So first of all, talking. First of all, he's saying that you don't need to classify it. He says that the dynamism is because of individual, but there is no point why to bring the discussion at all first. Are you getting? Superorganic word, why to bring it at first point?
But as you said, as organic or superorganic, organic.
He says that no need of classifying itself. You should refrain from the classification and just accept whatever it is there. Just see the culture as culture. You need not tell which is organic or which is superorganic. Right? This is superorganic view of culture. And then you have whether the culture is unique to humans. So I think today we cannot take diffusionism. We'll just try to see this last topic, that whether culture is unique to human beings or not. So if you see Leslie White, again, these all things you'll be, don't try to note down these anything now. I'll just give it to you. Try to understand, because these you'll be able to answer only when you complete your physical anthropology. Because there are certain features in the human's physical factors that have resulted in specific things, that what do you call, to walk bipedal. Because of that you are able to hold things. When you are able to hold things, you will create fire. Your gut, your changes has happened. When your changes in the body happened, your changes in the throat has happened, because the changes in the throat and your mouth part. Okay, so your jaws, when these got changed, you are able to pronounce things properly because of change in one of the genes, FOXP2. So because of that, in the Neanderthal, then from there the language started. So because of the language, you are able to communicate, because of your thought process. Because when you become erect, your, what do you call, when you have become erect, the placement of the head has changed. Previously it was in between. Okay, if this is the head, here it was placed, so that's why it used to hang like this. Okay, but now it is placed here so that it is erect properly. It is erect. Okay, it is at the end. Previously it was like this, so it was hanging. Now if you put at the center, you can rotate all the sides and it is stable also. Or else if you see for the chimpanzees or other primates, they'll be having the head always like this, right? So it is falling forward. So this erect middle. So it looks like it is at the end, but it is in the middle. So curve will go and foramen magnum. So all those words you will understand once you do physical anthropology. So they give some conditions because of which we have culture, and it is unique to human beings. But again, Jane Goodall, who is primatologist, okay, says that culture is not unique to human beings and it is present in the primates also. See, this is one of the important line you can see. 2 years back, when I have taught the same thing, because static part does not change, so the same thing was taught, and if you see here, this, the termites inside the cling to the twig. If you have seen, this has been the direct question in the prelims. So which animals do that? And they have asked name of the animal. So if you know that it's primate, so obviously within no seconds you will be giving the answer. Okay, sometimes don't ignore anthropology. At least 7 to 8 questions in prelims can be solved with your anthropology knowledge, because all the tribal questions can be solved. Archaeological questions can be solved, and such questions, if they innovate, then also from the biological part, then also you can solve. So at least 7 to 8 questions. That means it's somewhere around 16 marks. If you do your anthropology properly, prelims to some extent is done. And again, if you do your mains general studies properly, some 20-25 questions you can easily solve. So 50 to 60% of your preparation will be done if you do your mains properly for prelims. And some people think that by doing prelims that they can complete once once they'll finish prelims and then they'll start mains. If they finish prelims, their mains is 0. But if they finish mains, their prelims is already 60% done. So you should understand that what is the difference between doing prelims first or mains first. I would always suggest first finish your mains part so that your 60% of prelims is done. Okay, so you can see the orangutan mother is using a prepared stick to fish out things from the surveys. And these orangutans, if you observe in various places, okay, we will be studying in primatology. So there I will be telling you a lot of examples of different people, the primates' behavior. Okay, there you will be observed that they are able to learn the games. Okay, so video games. At the same time, they are able to learn to wash the clothes, learn to use the twigs. Okay, they are able to have rudimentary form of communication from one generation to other generation. They have relations and emotions attached, and they remember their friends almost up to 50 years of age. So having all these things in mind, which are similar to what humans are doing, Jane Goodall has said that to an extent the culture is present in the primates as well. But some people say that okay, culture is only learnt, but it is not transmitted in case of primates, because once they are born they learn and they'll keep it to themselves, but they are not transmitting it to the future generations. Learning things is different, but transmitting, like you are communicating and teaching everything to the next generation, is different, right? So culture is transmitted, but here the things that they learn they keep it to themselves, or they might see others and learn. Okay, so when these primates are doing it, others might see and learn it, but it is not transmitted from generation to generation. Are you getting my point? How to wash the clothes? Some orangutan, if humans are doing it, it will see and it will do, and other orangutans also will do it. But in the next generation, when the orangutans are taken to some other place, they do not do it, or they do not train it to the next generation, because they are replicating or imitating. So imitation is different from transmission. So that is what some of the people say about. So first you will talk that culture is unique to human beings as said by Leslie White, and you will write those features. Then you will try to counter it by showing the studies of Jane Goodall and various other primatologists, which you will be learning in unit 1.5. After writing that, again you will counter it that some of the anthropologists have said that imitation is different from transmission. In culture, there is a need for transmission from one generation to another generation rather than imitating. So that's how you conclude. So this is with respect to whether culture is specific to humans. First we'll say it's specific. But again you will say that, however, some primatologists after studying, they have found out something different. But again you will try to counter it, that they have found that the imitation part, but transmission is rarely observed. Henceforth, the studies has to be further conducted to come to a conclusion. Okay, so for now we can say that culture is unique to human beings, but in the coming days, further studies, further scientific study might bring out further details whether it's unique or not. But for now, from the understanding of the things, it is there. Okay, so now whether culture is unique to human beings or not also depends on the definition which you're considering. Culture is a complex whole of knowledge, beliefs, values, and customs that you acquire by being a member of society. If you take that, they have culture.
So there is no best definition for that.
So actually, it's all perception, perspectives. So you can't say which is best, or you'll see whether it's being applied or not. Okay, so it also varies with respect to definition also. So if you define it differently, then again it becomes different, right? So that's with respect to whether culture is unique to human beings or not. So in the next class, we'll try to do the diffusionism part. Okay, so we have a civilization also, so culture and civilization. We'll do that in the next class. Okay, so I think today you have learned too many names. So now again in civilization and culture, if I tell you some 7-8 names, then again it becomes tough for the day. So what we'll do is that we'll learn in the tomorrow's class, and we'll finish diffusionism, historical particularism, because these two are very small theories, and diffusionism is not that great important theory as well.
Sir, historical particularism and diffusionism both are different.
Yeah. So any doubts in today's class? Are you comfortable with what all has been read? If you are able to replicate this in your exam, it is more than sufficient. It's very tough to do so. It looks easy, you have understood everything. Unless and until you go and do it at least for 5 times or 10 times, you won't be able to write. Just because we have done more than 30-40 times, now we are able to teach in the class, but it's not possible, because all those names, remembering everything, it is only possible through multiple revisions. So every day go home and try to write it on your own. So now once you have read it, try to write it. You need not write 100% correct, but you should write it. Okay, so that's very important. Okay, then that's all.